The White House nears a deal to get enough vaccines for just about everyone this summer. New twists in the GameStop saga and Super Bowl commercials, while a lot of the usual advertisers are sitting on the sidelines this year. Here's what you need to know. Good morning. This is Cheddar's Need2Know podcast for Wednesday, January 27th. I am Jill Wagner with Carlo Versano. Good morning, Carlo.
Good morning, Jill. Did you feel that internet outage yesterday? Did you get that in Long Island?
I didn't, because I think it was the afternoon when I'm not really on the internet.
Yeah, it was. I'm just laughing because, I'm sitting here in my apartment, my wife and I, the entire internet is down, right? Like there's just nothing's working. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, maybe I'll just go over to, the Starbucks on the corner and do some work. Oh, no, wait, I can't do that because it's closed because of the 100-year plague ravaging the world. It's just like farce at this point. You have to laugh because otherwise it's too much.
Well, laughing is better, and I do feel better from yesterday. And thank you to everybody who wrote in. Brian Stelter over on Reliable Sources, he started his newsletter this morning saying the first Wednesday in January was the insurrection, the second Wednesday was the impeachment, the third Wednesday was the inauguration, and for the fourth, a respite, hopefully, right?
Knock on wood, man.
Just think about that month of January that we're having in 2021 when everyone was like, oh, turn the page. Everyone, thinking was January 1st, 2021, things get better. All right, let's get to some news. President Biden says the federal government is close to a deal with Pfizer and Moderna that would provide enough vaccines for 300 million Americans by the end of the summer. The White House also promising a 16% boost in vaccine deliveries to states over the next 3 weeks after governors have complained that they just aren't getting enough of the supply and have basically need to guess how many doses will be in each delivery. Meanwhile, the CDC is recommending that schools return to in-person teaching ASAP as long as mask wearing and distancing precautions are taken on campus and within the community. The CDC says there's no real evidence that schools are fueling outbreaks.
Most school activities, they basically say there's just no signs and kids need to be back in classes. And we talked earlier this week about, you're really starting to see some of the knock-on effects, as I like to say, from this of, an increase in teen suicides and kids just really falling behind. This is going to the school thing. It's just, I don't even know what to say about it. It's just like, it's so upsetting. I don't even have kids and it's upsetting to me. But on the vaccine note, I just want to highlight that for a second. Pfizer says they're going to have 200 million doses ready by the end of May. That's 2 months sooner than previously expected. So we are getting a little bit of good news on this front today. Sanofi, which is another one of these big pharma companies, they were making a coronavirus vaccine. They threw in the towel saying it didn't pan out, which is to be expected. Not all of these things are going to pan out, right? But what they said yesterday was they're actually going to use their manufacturing capabilities to help produce doses for Pfizer.
Oh, that's
so I thought
good.
that was yeah. So we're going to see a little, corporate America working together. You'll love to see that. And briefly, Jill, we got a couple good emails from Californians, especially Los Angelinos yesterday, about the California response, because I had asked, why is it so bad? Why is the pandemic so bad there? I just want to read a little bit from Mike from Pasadena. He wrote, I thought he made a couple really good points about what's going on in LA, especially. He said basically there's a few factors at play, right? There's a huge Latino population in Southern California that makes up a bulk of the frontline workers there. They, generally speaking, have to live like 3 generations to a house, which is obviously prime for the spread. Housing costs in Southern California are very high. There's a lot of young people in Southern California, and young people are idiots. Sorry, but they treat it like it's not a real thing, right? So there's parties on the beach and there's parties in lofts, and the cops are constantly breaking up parties. There's some of that happening in New York too, but I think people here are sort of taking it a little more seriously. He also made this point that I thought was really interesting. He said, Los Angeles is a land of extroverts, right? People from around the globe come to Los Angeles, to act and to make deals, and like these are the kinds of people who are going to be much less likely to, abide by these rules. He said that Mike said that, a large percentage of his friends are always trying to hang out, and he's like, guys, like, it's just not the right time. So I thought those were sort of some interesting points. And there was also a couple people wrote in to mention a podcast, which I'm now forgetting the name of, but it was with Andy Slavitt, and they were saying that made a really good.
I think that's his podcast.
Yeah, In the Bubble, exactly. Yeah. So I haven't listened to that yet, but that apparently does a really good job of explaining why California's hit so hard.
I'm just thinking about that, right? Because New York is definitely a land of introverts, I would think. I mean, you've got definitely a part of the population that's extroverts, but I would think it's like a lot of more like the writers and, I mean, it's so stereotypical, right? But
it's true. Yeah, but it's kind of true, right? I never really thought about it until he wrote that email. I thought that was just really kind of fascinating.
I also think it did not help that Gavin Newsom was found, was busted for going to this indoor dinner. It's just, Cuomo, love him or hate him, I mean, and of course if anyone who drove around New York around Thanksgiving, they had those little cutouts of his face that people would put on like windows and cars. I don't know if you ever saw them, Carlo, because I know you don't really leave your apartment, but I would be driving and you would see a few people would make fun of him as like kind of, Cuomo just peering in and seeing what's going on.
Yeah.
But I mean, if we all of a sudden found, if there a video surfaced of Cuomo at some party or some indoor dining thing while he's saying that you need to shut down indoor dining in New York City, it's just hypocritical, and I can't imagine that helped the cause in California. On the vaccine front, really quickly, just want to mention Johnson & Johnson reported their earnings yesterday. The CEO saying that they should have data available by next week. So if that data is promising and they want to move forward, which all indications are that they probably do, or else they would have pulled the plug by now. Who knows? Maybe they could be applying for that emergency use authorization by next week, which means we'd have a third vaccine in the pipeline and a vaccine that only requires one dose. So potentially huge. Also, there is a potential treatment that I just wanted to quickly mention, and I'm reading from the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. An international team of scientists identifies a new treatment for COVID-19 that appears to be far more effective than the drugs that are in use now. It comes from a rare marine sea squirt found only in the waters around the Spanish island of Ibiza. A potential COVID-19 treatment. It's called Aplidin. Researchers say it's proven to be 27.5 times more effective than the well-known remdesivir in human cells in labs. So
I hadn't seen that.
It's already a drug that's approved in Australia to treat a certain condition, I think myeloma. So potential good news that if they could ramp that up, because that's another piece of this is treating people who do get really sick. On the political front, Senate Republicans overwhelmingly voted against holding an impeachment trial for former President Trump, making it highly unlikely, excuse me, that there would be enough votes to convict Trump and bar him from holding public office. The trial's still happening in 2 weeks, but given the margins on whether to even hold it, Trump will almost surely escape conviction for, quote, inciting the insurrection. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell voted to dismiss the trial, saying that it was unconstitutional because Trump is a former president.
Which, of course, is hilarious because McConnell is the one who delayed having the trial immediately following the riots. Democrats had a shot at conviction, I think, probably on January 7th in the immediate aftermath of this, just when everyone was so shook. But McConnell didn't want to hold the trial so fast, so they weren't able to do it. And I think once the conservative media started spinning, getting the talking points in order, I don't think there was really any way Republicans were going to go forward on convicting President Trump. The talking point on Fox News in that world right now is really sort of annoying to me. It's basically, the media. It's always the media, right? The media is always the villain in this story. We're always the villain. We're always the problem. But basically the talking point is that the media and the radical left or whatever wants to cancel Trump. This is about cancel culture now. Congressman Matt Gaetz of Florida called it the zenith of cancel culture, which doesn't even make any sense whatsoever. It's just, it is so ridiculous how they talk about Donald Trump on the right. It's like he's a little baby. Oh, Trump is a little baby. He has no agency. He never has any responsibility for any of his own words or actions because he's 2 years old. It's just all part of a scheme by the media to take him down. Everybody's just against Trump. Oh, I'm so sick of it, Jill. It's why I say I don't want to talk about this anymore, because it just enrages me. Um, I mean, these are people who literally could have been killed, right? I mean, I have to
5
imagine
people were
that if
killed.
a yeah, exactly. And of course, including a police officer. But I'm talking about members of Congress. I have to think that if an actual member of Congress, God forbid, died that day, I don't think it would have changed anything.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that the role that the media has had in the rise and potential fall of President Trump is fascinating. And I do think that the media, if anything, should be credited for creating him as a larger-than-life persona. And
No
you
question.
can even talk
Yes.
about The Apprentice, and starting with that.
No question.
And that's not news media, but it is media.
Look, the media. I'm not giving the media, to the extent that the media is even really like a thing. But I don't want to give us a pass. I don't think the media handled itself, the news media, particularly well these last 4 years at all. But it's never like, Marco Rubio and all of these guys, they never say like, look, what Donald Trump did was flat out wrong and he should be punished for it. He should take responsibility for it. It's always, well, I don't necessarily agree with what he said, but the media is really trying to cancel him. It's just, ugh.
There is a possibility that some Republicans, like even a Mitch McConnell, could turn around and say, I disagreed that there should be a trial because he's a former president. But then once there is a trial and they look at the evidence in front of them, say, okay, it is an impeachable offense. I doubt that that's going to happen, but I guess it is a possibility. Meanwhile, the new acting chief of the Capitol Police apologized in person to members of Congress for the department's failure 3 weeks ago. She did not discuss one of the big outstanding questions from the riot. What exactly was the sequence of events at the Pentagon that kept the National Guard from responding for hours while the building was under siege?
That, to me, is still the big question here. The head of the D.C. National Guard telling the Washington Post yesterday that the Pentagon had stripped him of his authority to deploy troops ahead of that riot, which ended up costing them hours in being able to send those troops in. I think that, clearly the Capitol Police were caught off guard. We know that. Clearly the National Guard wasn't there in time. We know that. But the question to me is, was there some kind of willful or even passive attempt within the Department of Defense, within the Trump administration, to allow this thing to happen? I'm not saying that they were like, that they were like conspiring to let it happen, but just allowing the situation to unfold in the way it did, outside of the words from the president himself.
In the business world, Larry Fink, the CEO of the world's biggest asset manager, BlackRock, and one of the most influential people on Wall Street, warning companies that they need to commit to a game plan for achieving net zero emissions by 2050 or risk BlackRock dumping their stocks. In his annual letter to world CEOs, Fink doubled down on his warning last year that corporate America needs to get on board with net zero, saying a tectonic shift in the investing landscape is accelerating.
Yes, BlackRock is the mother of all these funds, right? $9 trillion in assets under management. Basically, they have the ear of every corporate board, every CEO on earth. So that's why it's important that that Fink is coming out and basically saying, like, look, climate change is not only is it real, it's happening faster than we anticipated, and there is this major transition towards clean energy and net zero emissions, and you being CEOs everywhere need to get on board. It's funny because last year he did this also, and corporate America was actually really shook by this letter. And then what happened after that? The pandemic came about, and all of these clean energy stocks like Tesla took off. So he actually was looking pretty smart in retrospect. A lot of this is probably pretty clever PR. Because especially if you're an asset manager, you can't divest in companies that are held in index funds, right? And I think a lot of these funds, like BlackRock, mostly invest in index funds. Still, when Larry Fink talks, people listen. So I think good for him for sort of setting the course here.
I mean, 2050 though seems like it's kind of far off. That's not highly ambitious, right?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, it is.
I don't
sort
know.
Of far off,
I don't know.
It feels forever from now, right? Like what, 30 years from now? But I think when you're talking about, getting to net zero greenhouse gas emissions, like that ain't gonna, that's not happening anytime soon.
Right. It's not easy. And it's another example also of just the private sector being ahead of the game and just consistently being ahead of the public sector. It happens in everything. It happened with, we even think about COVID shutdowns. Apple was shutting its stores before Citi, and telling its employees it is not safe for you to go in. Before
That's a great point.
cities decided that it was time to do it. Okay, an update on a story that we talked about yesterday. Two big Wall Street funds, Citadel and Point72, are going to be investing nearly $3 billion to bail out a hedge fund that's on the ropes due to its short positions in stocks like GameStop. That fund, Melvin Capital, has been decimated by its bet against GameStop, which was up another 90% yesterday.
Have you looked at the chart this morning? It's up another 100% in pre-market trading today. 110% as of this hour. This, of course, just fueled by this army of Redditors who are buying the stock with the hope that it will bankrupt Melvin Capital. And had these two funds not come to the rescue last night, Melvin would have gone bankrupt at the stock market open today. One thing to remember about shorting stocks, and I am far from a finance guru here. But the thing to remember about shorting stocks is, you're just selling something you don't own in order to profit if it goes down. But the potential losses are infinite, right? If you buy a stock for $10, the most you could ever lose on that investment is $10. If you short a stock at $10 and it goes to $100, you lost $90, right? So, it's very risky. This is a very risky business, and hedge funds have been doing it for a very long time. It's illegal to manipulate the market to force a short squeeze, which is what's happening here. But it happens all the time. It's one of those things that, like, the SEC is sort of powerless to stop. By the way, it's not exactly – I think what's happening here possibly is illegal, but the SEC has not weighed in on anything. I mean, I don't know what's going on over there, if they have, if they're still working, but they are the regulator for Wall Street. It would be nice
you guys there? Everyone's working remotely, so
hello.
Productivity's
what's going on here,
down.
Guys?
Super Bowl commercials going to look a bit different this year. Some regular big name advertisers like Pepsi, Coca-Cola, and Budweiser opting not to shell out $5.5 million to CBS for a 30-second spot at this year's game. Bud donating money to the Ad Council for a vaccination campaign instead. Filling in the gaps are first-time Super Bowl advertisers like Chipotle and Vroom, as well as what is that beer?
Michelob.
Michelob
Ultra. Sometimes the words that you get tripped up on, and I'm not making fun of you. I am, hello, but I always laugh at them. But I do it out of jest and out of love. Well,
because they're also the words that I've only heard. You say them, but you don't necessarily see them written, and then you're like, wait, I need to say this word? Is that a ch or a sh? Anyway, sorry. As well as Michelob Ultra and the e-commerce platform Mercari. I hope I'm not losing my credibility with everybody. I'll get names of real, politicians right, but it's just a beer. I'm allowed to mispronounce it.
Of course you are, and I do it too. I do also. We should do that as Love Hate Hate, because there is nothing worse than when you say a word that you've been saying in your head the wrong way, like your whole life, and someone's like, "What?" I'm trying to think of a good example, but I had a couple of them.
I'm the worst because I call out my husband all the time, and he tells me he likes it because it shows that I'm smart. I know he's like cringing every time I do it.
Oh yeah. So write us in with your we'll read some of them, like words that are in your head are said one way, and then when you hear them in public, you're like, I've been saying this wrong my whole life.
Wait,
you know what I mean?
did that with Chobani yogurt. I used to think it was Habani. And then I had when I was at CBS in my CBS days, I did a report, and my producer was like, "How are you pronouncing that yogurt?" I'm like, "Isn't it Habani? Isn't it a silent?" It's just I thought it was pronounced with an H. Anyway, Carlo, your take on Super Bowl ads?
We're talking about Super Bowl ads. Yes. I think that what happened here is, a lot of these advertisers didn't want to pay because they didn't even know if this game was going to happen, right? But the irony, of course, is that I think this Super Bowl is probably going to break ratings records because A, it looks like a fantastic matchup, and B, as I've said countless times talking about movies, like people are dying to watch any sort of like monocultural event, right? No matter what it is. So I think that you're going to see people. I think everybody in America is going to watch the Super Bowl because there's nothing else on. Why not?
And not only that. Normally, when you think about it, think about how many people probably normally watch at a Super Bowl party. And you are not really watching the commercials, right? If I'm thinking about any of the few Super Bowl parties I've been to, it's like you watch the game, you're drinking, you're chatting, blah, blah, blah. if you're at home by yourself watching, you might watch the commercials unless you run to the bathroom. I mean, you're probably going to be a very captive audience.
Well, plus, if you have 10 people watching at a Super Bowl party, that only counts in the ratings, obviously. It's like one household, right? So then that's 10 households. Ooh, that's smart. Okay, anyway, mark my words. I think the Super Bowl is going to have a ratings record this year.
And speaking of big American companies and regular Super Bowl advertisers, Coke entering the crowded market for cold coffee beverages with a new line of beverages that, quote, sip like a Coke and finish like a coffee, at least according to the tagline. The drink comes in 3 flavors, dark blend, vanilla, and caramel, along with a sugar-free Coke Zero version. Coke says the drink's perfect for that 3 p.m. slump when you might be debating whether you want to drink a soda or a coffee. You can have both. It is simply named Coca-Cola with Coffee, launched in Japan in 2018, so it makes its debut in U.S. grocery stores this week. By the way, 69 milligrams of caffeine per can. That should give you a nice kick. Carlo, should get you through that late show that you do.
A tall black coffee at Starbucks has 240 milligrams of caffeine. Why? Just drink that. It's also not soda. Just drink coffee like a normal person. These things that are like these novelty sodas. I mean, I don't know. I just don't really get it. I'm not really a soda person anymore. But that being said, the couple things that I've read say that this is actually quite good. So I would try it. You?
I don't like soda. I don't like carbonation, so I'm not the audience for this one. But these companies.
You're a coffee drinker, though.
Yes, I'm not happy right now because the coffee machine here at Cheddar is not working. Oh. So I need to figure out how I'm going to possibly get through 4 new hours of live TV. Oh.
Well, if you had a Coca-Cola with coffee, you wouldn't have a problem. Free
advertising.
Oh.
Okay, everybody, that is what you need to know for Wednesday, January 27th.
Have a good day, guys.